Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm a simple physiotherapist. It is you had. I'm really grateful to you for such a great introduction of me. So, am I allowed to share? Sir?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Thanks. Hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Very sincere to everyone, and happy Guru Purnima to all the dignitaries, respected teachers present over here. So, today, myself, Himanshu Sharma, I'm here, and before starting my topic is a very basic topic, just to have a basic understanding of how the physiotherapy or how the rehabilitation will work. Before initiating with my words, I would like to express my sincere and hand-folded gratitudes toward the physiotherapy department of Banarsi Das Chandiwala University, and I'm really thankful to the Banarsi Das Chandiwala Seva Samaras Trust Society for such a great conclave or such a great knowledge sharing event to be organized during this pandemic. Though knowledge or learning should never stop. So, by thinking this, you had taken an initiative of such a great topic of cerebral palsy, because in this pandemic, most of the sufferers are from pediatric population, because the pediatric physiotherapy was being compromised for a long, and so this was a much needed topic to compile all the expert opinions, though we can learn and can incorporate something better into our practice. So this is really great. We are really grateful for the Trust Society for appreciating such efforts, and really would like to congratulate the team and organizing committee of the Banarsi Das Chandiwala Institute of Physiotherapy, headed by Dr. Nidhi Kalra ma'am and Dr. Mohammad Asif sir, for organizing such a great event. So really thankful to you all, and warm welcome and thankful to the chief guest of the session, Dr. A.K. Jain sir, to spare their precious time to join such a great event and to make it more precious with your presence. Thank you all. Thanks. Without taking much of the time, I would like to go ahead with my session. So today in this session, actually the 2 or 3 topics are being concluded. So I'd like to give some brief overview of the 2-3 things. One is neuroplasticity, another one is the motor learning. Audible? One is neuroplasticity, another one is the motor learning, and at last the sensory processing. So as it is very well known and it's very clear, the neuroplasticity, as the word suggests, this is something to be related with the nervous system. And obviously, if we are talking about the plasticity, means there is some plastic changes, means the nervous system which is showing some capability to change itself, most probably to be known as neuroplasticity by the name. So as we can see in this image, our brain has a immense capability to change itself during insult and during recovery as well. Whatever the pathways, whatever the neurons, whatever the synapses which are being utilized the most will become more stronger with the practice, with the experiences, and the pathways which are utilized least will become either absent or diminished. So this is the a good time of our brain to make some plastic changes. Whenever someone has any stroke, any sort of neural injury, it goes into the degeneration, means there are few changes, few degenerative changes taking place to change the normal anatomy. Later on, as the rehabilitation or as the management starts to recover, the changes again starts to make it recover as completely as possible. Or if sometimes the complete recovery is not to be achieved, Then some compensatory strategies has to be learned by sufferer. Though we usually have seen many of the stroke population and many of the neurologically impaired population they recover completely, neither they would have some their own compensatory mechanism to fulfill their demands to complete their activities of daily living at most of their level of dependence. So as I already discussed, it is the ability of our brain to change for the betterment, before betterment, to change to the normal anatomy, to the pathoanatomy, and then it will again come to the normal anatomy as much as possible. And very interestingly, the capability of neuroplasticity persists throughout our lifespan. It was being considered that pediatric population or the growing brain has comparatively a larger capability to change. Rather, it is also possible or present in the older populations. And this is the only reason why and how the stroke person, which usually affect the elder age people, had recovered to some extent or resumed their independence. It involves from neural connections for the information which has been derived from their experiences, from their environment, from the sensory stimulation, and during the normal development, the normal growth and development of the brain or the nervous tissue. Whenever we talk about the neuroplasticity or the plastic changes which occurs within the brain, they can be broadly categorized in the two categories. One is the changes which are to be known as the functional changes or temporal changes. Another one is the spatial changes or the structural changes. So as you can see in this flowchart, one arrow is depicting that temporal is going towards the spatial. So it represents that the functional changes or the change at the level of a single neuron will lead to the change in the level of multiple neurons. Because our brain is just made up of the neurons, neurochemicals, and neurochemical signals. So we do have a bundle of neurons in our nervous system, and it is continuous throughout. There is no selective or distinct area. We do study them separately for the understanding, for the better understanding. But nervous system as a whole is just a continuous bundle, as a continuous system, continuous organ. So whenever a single neuron will evolve, it will develop or regenerate, then definitely it will lead to the development or the regeneration of the neighboring neurons or multiple neurons, and it will lead to the regeneration of the complete system. In the functional neuroplasticity, there can be the changes which are short term, there can be the changes which are for the long term. When we talk about the structural changes, means whenever we are talking about the anatomical changes within the nervous system, so we are talking here in regards to the multiple neurons, not about a single neurons. Means there must be more than one neuron has to be involved here. So the biggest example is the collateral sprouting. Means the collaterals are evolving and coming together, joining hands together to again make a pathway. Means if there is some bridge which has been broken up, now we are again trying to make either a bridge or maybe a compensatory bridge, though the pathway can be intact or the impulse can be transferred from one end to the another end. So collateral sprouting, of the collateral sprouting is there for recovering the compensatory mechanism or to recover the normal function. And pruning. Pruning we'll discuss later in detail. Pruning actually, we are talking here again about the synapses. So either whenever we are talking about regeneration, the neuron will recover or regenerate, or before regeneration, the degeneration will take place. So whatever the neuron or whatever the synapses which are of no use, they will be destroyed. And this synaptic pruning takes place continuously over the time, as we do have some specific habits. So whatever is our specific habit, that particular motor performance, particular neuron responsible for that activity would be having the stronger pathway, stronger synaptic transmission, rather something we are not using so commonly. If suppose I am not a runner, So the muscles or the endurance, which I do not have as similar to the runner, because the motor recruitment, the speed of motor recruitment and the number of motor units needed for the running are not so enough in me because of the lack of uh, environment, lack of experience and practice as well. So in the structural changes, the sprouting, new generation, or the pruning means degeneration or removal of the unnecessary or unwanted synapses. So whenever we talk about the structural changes within the brain, there are a few terms which comes into the notice. Number one and is the synaptic plasticity. So as it is very clear by the name, we are talking here about the synapses, because all the information can only be carried out via the synapse, and most of the synapses in our nervous system are the chemical synapses, means they do also need some sort of a chemical that is known as neurotransmitter. So here our synapses, which are present anywhere in the nervous system, has the capability to change according to the demand. So that to be known as synaptic plasticity. Another thing, whenever someone has any insult, any trauma to a particular area or particular part of the nervous system, damage occurs. Degeneration happens. Definitely, we do know that degeneration may be either Wallerian degeneration or maybe a retrograde degeneration. It will definitely affect the neuron, proximal and distal both. And along with neuron, this always affects the synapses, the junction between two neurons. So whenever the junction has been lost, so simply the basic phenomena, we should have a compensatory pathway, we should have a compensatory base. So again, nervous system will start recovering as per the time, according to the stimulus given, it will again restart generating the synapses, that will be known as synaptogenesis. Another one thing is a migration. Neuronal migration means you are migrating to some other place. If suppose I need to give you something, I need to come to you, or I need to send the particle or object via courier, means the object has to be migrated from one place to another place. Similarly, if the two neurons are apart from each other and there is no connection in between, so any of the one neuron has to reach towards the another, then only it can make a connection. Because for the synapse or the synaptic transmission, a specific distance has to be there. If they are apart from this, then definitely there would not be any connection or not be any communication in between. So they must reach a specific distance to communicate with each other. For this purpose, physiologically, neurons starts to generate and it starts to migrate towards the another neuron, though it can communicate with it, which can be the nearby to it or next to it. Similarly, the next change is the neurogenesis. Means suppose this neuron has been lost. This one is not here. So how do you communicate with another part? Because there is nothing here. So there must be a neuron. So another neuron has to evolve, has to be developed. Then only it can migrate and can make a synapse and can complete a pathway. And this way, the compensatory mechanism or the resolution, recovery of function can occur. And definitely, cell death, which usually takes place normally in the daily living, is also known as apoptosis, natural cell death. So naturally, few neurons dies, and in response to this, another neurons evolves or generates for the completing the demand, for completing the function. So neuronal cell death is necessary because whatever the neuron has been degenerated, if it has been properly angled, it has been properly died or phagocytosed, then only the new cell can be developed. So neuronal cell death is again a capability, means we are changing whatever the change. It can be a positive change, it can be a negative change. Would always be regarded as a plastic change. So let us have some discussion on this. So you can see in this image is showing the synaptic plasticity. You can see there are many number of neurons, and as definitely they are mostly the chemical synapses, though they should not have a direct junction. There must be from each other. So the impulses are transferred from one end to the another end, and this is the synapse. So this synaptic transmission is taking place, and this synaptic transmission or giving the impulse from one end to another is known as synaptic plasticity. So this do take place in response to the environment, in response to the stimulus. To complete synaptic plasticity, there must be adequate stimulus. Adequate strength of stimulus is needed. As we already discussed or studied during our studies, the threshold. Threshold means a minimal amount of any stimulus required to excite it or to make the synapse to work or to make the impulse to transfer to another end. So if the adequate strength of stimulus is there, then there would be two changes will occur at the level of synapse. One would be known as LT, another one would be known as LTD. Long-term potentiation and long-term depression. So it is very clear by the name. Definitely, if there is a name depression, means something has to be stalled, something has to be depressed or stopped. If there is a potentiation means to increase. So whenever we'll talk about the long-term potentiation, means we will have more synapse, more synaptic plasticity. It has to work in a positive way to promote. Long-term depression, whatever synapses are of no use, they have to be removed. Though we will have more space to generate another new neurons which are needed. Because we do have a limited space available. If we have more waste material there, then definitely the new cell generation would be affected. So whatever is not needed has to be removed, though the new needed can be added. So long-term potentiation, the new synaptic development and long-term depression is to remove the unneeded synapses. There are some other changes in the receptors for the specific neurotransmitter. If the receptor which has been released at the level of synapse is excitatory in nature, definitely it will excitate the stimulus. It will cause synaptic potentiation. If the receptor which has been released at the synapse is a depressive or inhibitory in nature, then definitely it will cause the inhibition of the impulse. The impulse will not carry on to the another neuron. So there can be the either upregulation of the neurotransmitter or there can be the downregulation of the neurotransmitters. And there are some other protein changes inside the cell, neuronal cell, and that causes the synapse to become more plastic and leads to the synaptic plasticity. As I already explained, synaptic genesis and synaptic pruning. So development of the new synapse, the genesis, creating and removing the old or not needed is known as pruning. It builds and destroys the connection between the neurons respectively as per the demand. Let us have a look on the video to have a better understanding or to visualize how the synaptogenesis and synaptic pruning is taking place. Please let me know if the audio is there, if you can hear the sound. Is the video available on the screen?
Sir, not yet, sir.
Now even?
So there was a little bit of sound, but the video is not available, sir.
Okay, just a minute. Just a minute, I'm resharing the screen. Hope it is visible now.
Yes, sir, it's visible now, sir.
Three, four, and
Hope it is audible also.
Yes, sir, the video is visible, sir, and the audio is there, sir.
this is a primary neuron in the blue color. The red and green are the secondary. I'm saying primary or secondary because impulse is coming from primary and going towards the secondary, just for the understanding. So here synaptogenesis and synaptic pruning, how it is taking place is being displayed here. So whenever the impulse coming from the blue neuron, either it is going more commonly to the red neuron, it will get diverted towards the red side, or if it is being not utilized as such, then this will lead to the synaptic pruning to the red neuron, and it will again move towards the green side of the neuron. So please go ahead. As the previously used pathway now is not commonly used, so it has been removed or debilitated, and it leads to the synaptic pruning on the previous pathway. And as we are using a new pathway, definitely the new pathway will become more stronger and will come closer to the primary neuron. Thank you for watching, and let me reshare my PPT. Now I hope PPT is visible.
Yes, sir.
So synaptic genesis and synaptic pruning, we are making the new neurons, new synapses. It is also clear in this image. As you can see above, the pathway below is not being utilized, and though it has been removed or cut it off. So it has been shown off by the scissor. Let me take a pointer also. So this has been pruning here, and synaptogenesis will take place here. Synaptic pruning is basically a neurological regulatory process which facilitates a change in neural structure while reducing an overall number of neurons and synapses. So in the brain, as we have a limited space, we do not want any waste material, any synapse which is of no use, we will remove it, and the synapse which is of more use, we will make it more strong. And resulting synaptic connections will become definitely more stronger, more efficient. It is believed to represent the learning process. As we learn the new pathway, as we learn the new skill, that will gradually become more efficient after the practice. So this how the synaptic plasticity is taking place, or synaptogenesis is taking place. And whatever the previously learned compensatory mechanism had been minimized because of the synaptic pruning. So synapses that are frequently used have become stronger, and which are not to be used will become eliminated. And there is a concept, it's a HAPS concept which commonly being used even in motor learning also. The neurons which fires together will fire together, and neurons which fires apart, definitely they will fire apart. Means the neurons who are firing together, who are being stimulated or activated together, will have a stronger connection, will be used, and will have a synaptogenesis. And the neurons which are not in regular contact will be having the synaptic pruning. Now, this you can see in this image. I was talking about neuronal migration. As you can see, the body from here is going towards the another neuron to make a contact, to make a connection with the next neuron. So this is how the neuronal migration is taking place. I hope there is some new network instability. Is PPT available?
Yes, sir. It's there, sir.
Thank you.
Visible.
So neural migration is process why neuron extends to the place of birth to connect to the far-reaching areas of the brain, and this is the way how the brain starts, or how the CNS generates or grows during the young age, up to the 5 years of age. So the neurons are And this you can even relate with your spinal cord. So whenever a child is there, the spinal cord is even remains in the more lower in the lumbar spinal area, rather it becomes shifted to the L1 as we become adult. So because of the neural migration and development, along with the bone ossifications. So this was the next concept, neurogenesis. So we do have a single neuron, but to complete a task, we need multiple neurons. So complete neuron can be evolved. And indirectly, repeatedly, we are focusing that neurons can be regenerated, things can be recovered, at least to some extent or maybe completely. So this is how the more number of neurons can be generated within the nervous system. It's a creation to create the new neurons, and it's a process by which the neurons are generated via the neuronal stem cells. Stem cells, definitely, we know there are PSSCs and other stem cells. They are capable of developing anything, and stem cell therapy is actually highlighting research since last 2 decades, and it has great results in the case of chronic neurological conditions as well. So it largely occurs in developing brain. Limited neurogenesis occurs in the adult brain. So capability slightly reduced as per the age advances.
रिपोर्ट बनाने में
There are few studies that suggest the neurogenesis will occur in the adult mammalian brain and can also persist in the old age pupils. So means it can happen, but the limit is decreased. Actually, it can be to the limited extent. Whenever we talk about the learning and memory, definitely the hippocampus and olfactory bulb and cerebellum, these are the areas to work in connection with each other with a well-coordinated way. Now, the most important thing, the death of the unwanted or half or semi-degenerated neurons. If they will completely engulf, then only the new cell can come up and make a new neuron. So this can happen from either damage or can be due to overexcitation or any of the disease. It is a natural programmed cell death which usually takes place. Whatever, as in our skin or in other body tissues, the cells are regularly regenerating. So similarly, the regular apoptosis is taking place in the nervous system. Normally, the cells, neuronal cells, which are not needed, not to be used, becomes died, or in reference to them, another new cells evolves. So let us have a view on the neuroplasticity.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less,
You
and
can see how gradually, whenever we practice a new task, we start activating a new neuronal pathway, and gradually this new neuronal pathway will become stronger. And this is the reason how initially when the patient develops more synergistic or more compensatory strategies. Later on, it gets developed into the less compensatory or near normal activities. So here actually, if suppose the previous pathway has been damaged or cannot be recovered completely, we can develop a new pathway to complete a task, either completely or to the near complete.
Weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So hope now you will be able to imagine or understand about the neuroplasticity. There are a few specific techniques which can be used to improve the neuroplasticity or to enhance the neuroplastic changes within the nervous system. The techniques which improves our motor learning, biofeedback training, task-specific training is most commonly practiced not only in the adult neurology as well as in the pediatric neurology. Task-specific training has the greatest effects because we assumes or the research suggests that brain memorizes function rather than a movement. So doing an anatomical movement is of less use than doing a functional task to take a glass and hold it and try to drink the water from the affected hand. So task specific training has having the greater effect than the anatomical movements. Neurodevelopmental training, basically a traditional approach. CIMT is again not so new, but yeah, it's an evolving approach and commonly practiced and has a good result. It has been basically based on the operant conditioning. We'll see later. PNF technique, again a traditional technique which has magical effects and very good effects in the neurological as well as musculoskeletal condition. And this is, there are lots of principles which makes the new pathways which improves our motor learning. So there can be positive and negative effects of the neuroplasticity. Positive effects are the new skills. We can learn new skill anytime. If when you were child, you were not aware about the cycling, you learned it. And in the adult age, sometimes you learn car driving and something. So this is how your neuroplasticity having the positive effects. You will have better cognition, the more efficient communication between the sensory and motor pathways. You will have improved function of the aging. Simply as we are a student, we started studying, learning, and gradually become more educated and more learned after the gradual practice and as we study. Slowing down the pathological process, because in the positive part, we do try to minimize the pathophysiological effects. We will promote this recovery. We'll improve motor control. There would be more memory, because whenever we are performing any of the movement, definitely it will causing the development of the motor memory into the brain. As well, there are a few negative outcomes of this. It can cause decline in the brain function. No, because plasticity can be on the positive aspect, can be on the negative aspect. Pruning, synaptic pruning is also a part of neuroplasticity. That's why we can regard it as a negative outcome. It can cause altered motor control for some time whenever there is a damage or trauma. Impaired performance of ADL, definitely whenever someone has any sort of neurological insult, will have dependency, more dependent like amplified perception and all. There are a few types of neuroplasticity. It can be dependent on your practice. So again, HAPS concept applies here. The neurons which fires together will definitely be wired together. So whatever the practice you are going to do, whatever the movement you will practice, gradually you can become master of it. So this is known as practice dependent plasticity. Another is a completive plasticity, means whenever if you are not using, suppose if you are not using your arm, you are not using biceps, then definitely gradually there is not only the wasting of the muscles, as well the motor unit will get diminished. Motor unit in the biceps will get diminished. So that is a competitive plasticity. If you will not use it, and then you will lose it. So simply it was a common acronym during our studies. Our teachers usually says, yes, use your brains. So if you will not use your brain, definitely you can lose it. If you lose it, then definitely it will improve and you will have better memory and better cognition. Positive plasticity can be compensatory changes, means whatever the insult, whatever the trauma happens to the nervous system, and we do have loss of function. So we are trying to recover it as much as possible. via either compensatory mechanism. So that the compensatory changes is again a part of positive plasticity. Temporal changes, release of neuromodulators, more neurotransmitters are being released to complete the transmission or to have a better function and to form the alternating pathway like collateral sprouting. So these are all the positive types of plasticity. And another one is the negative plasticity, which causes excessive excitatory stimulus. So if there's excessive excitatory stimulus, the biggest and very good example you can see like anxiety. In the case of anxiety, we do have overactivity of the neurons. And that overactivity is causing the degeneration or delineating our memory and delineating or eliminating our CNS function. So, or another example can be the spasticity. Means we are having overactivity, which is not expected or not needed at all. And it can even happen sometimes because of the poor motivation, can be due to the apoptosis, natural cell death. So here the acronym is that neurons that fires out of synchronization fails to link. Means one who will not synchronize. Suppose you are expected to work in any environment. If you will be working very synchronized, working in a synchronized way as a team, then definitely the team and you both will grow. If you will not be synchronized with them, then you will get isolated. Team will grow, you will be lagged off. So you will fail to link, and definitely it would be the negative effects. Now, next was the motor learning. Definitely, as we know, it is a set of internal process which has been associated with the practice and experience. So the two words, practice and experience, are needed to have the learning. We can anytime learn the new things or do the old thing in a new way. And this capability of the brain is known as motor learning, by which we can produce a skilled behavior or we can have a temporary or permanent change in our skill behavior. There are basically four components of it. One is acquiring capability of skilled action. Another one is learning results from your experiences or practice. Howsoever your practice or experience was there, you would develop your skills. Learning cannot be measured directly. You can just measure it via the behavior or via the outcome you produce. Permanent change in the behavior. So short-term alteration cannot take place. Enough for the learning purposes. So whenever we talk about the learning, so there are only three stages of the learning, motor learning are. One is the cognitive stage, another one would be the associative stage, and third one would be the autonomous stage. So let me take an example, a very good example of it, and my favorite example actually, to understand the stage of motor learning. Cognitive stage, just suppose if I am a learner, I am a new learner of cycling. When I was a 5-year-old, so my parents made me to sit on the cycle, and it has 2 supporting wheels also, and they used to support me during when I do the pedaling and all. So when you started learning the cycle, so what you had done, you had started you were just running, or you were just jumping and sitting on the seat. So these were all the strategies, compensatory, which we had tried, we had done during our learning stage. So before doing, we just have to think what I have to do, where should I place my step, on which pedal I should place my step first. So that was a cognitive stage. Cognitively, I have to think, then I will perform. So first of all, the thing is what to do. First of all, you have to do the motor imagery. You have to think what you are expected to do, then you will perform it. So every time you would like to perform, you have to imagine it. You have to do it consciously, cognitively, willingly. So conveyance and acquisition of new information is there. You will try again and again, you will fall again and again, and gradually you will start doing it with more efficiency rather than previous. So this is the cognitive stage, means how we can understand in case of cycling or learning a cycling. So initially a new learner had started cycling, but whenever I have to stop the cycle, I need to jump it out. I cannot stop it by just placing 1 foot out. So this was not possible in cognitive stage. So that is the example of cognitive stage. I need to think, or I need to just jump out. Associative stage. So suppose you learn the cycling. Now you don't need to jump out. You can gradually or smoothly come up, and you can usually gradually or smoothly take off the cycle, or you can smoothly start the cycling as well. But whenever you go in a crowded area, or whenever you go near to the red light, or you are to the circle, so what do happen? So we do have more anxiety, we have to become more conscious, because we learned the cycling in our street, in our street where there are no such crowd, or in the we were alone to practice. Now we are exposed to the more discrete environment, and we are exposed to the more crowded environment. Then definitely before reaching to the circle, I around 100-meter, 200-meter before the circle, I'll stop, I'll come out of, I'll take off it, and then I'll move and walk away up to the circle, and I'll close the circle while walking, and then again I'll start cycling. So that has usually happened with us. That was the associative stage. Means we do learn the things, but still translation of declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge was taking place, and there was some difficult and awkward position where we need to be conscious about, and we are not so much autonomous. So we will try to eliminate the mistakes that we should not have. Yeah, sorry. So associative stress means we need to think it out, and autonomous stress means you can automatically perform the movement. You don't need to think it in a, you don't need any motor imagery or anything else with this. So whenever we talk about the motor learning or memory, definitely there can be either explicit declarative type of memory or can be non-declarative. So there are various ways by which we can understand it. There can be a reflex pathway, means when we will perform the movement via reflex activation. There can be a associative learning, which can happen either due to the classical conditioning or can be due to the operant conditioning method. Means we will have some feed forward and feedback mechanism. And there would be some other skills and habit which will improve our learnings. So associative classical conditioning is the Pavlov's method, where we do have unconditional stimulus has to be added, and for this stimulus we will have a desired response. In operant conditioning, we are actually giving the positive reinforcement. So our focus was on giving the rewards. So if suppose you got the first marks or you got the highest marks in the class, you would be appreciated into the class. That is a positive reinforcement. So you will try to learn more. And similarly, the another methods of learning are procedural learning, declarative learnings. It results in the knowledge and can be consciously recalled. There can be group of abstract ideas which comes up and natures and controls the acquisition of modification of movement. There are basically theories. The most commonest and mostly utilized theory is Adams closed loop theory. Another theories are Smith schema theory and ecological theory. So we'll go briefly about all the theories. There is open loop and closed loop two theories. So let us come up to this diagram. So here in open loop theory, we will not have any of the feedback. Means you are supposed or you are asked to perform a movement, and while receiving a stimulus, means I asked you to do this, you just I'm asking you to move your elbow and you get a perceptual mechanism. You have some memory, a previous memory of this movement, and along with this previous memory, as I had performed it, so you have visualized it and you had an auditory response as well, and accordingly you develop your perceptual trace, and in response to this perceptual trace, you develop your motor command, motor action. So whenever I am not giving you the feedback, how you are performing, is it enough, it is complete or incomplete or poor or good. So it would be known as open loop theory. Whenever it will come up with the feedback, means if suppose you are performing the movement like this and I ask you just do it more, or you can go even more, try to reach far away. So then this becomes closed loop theory. In the closed loop theory, the main thing is the knowledge of performance and knowledge of results. So in the knowledge of results, basically it talks about the movement, and knowledge of performance is about the muscle, which causes the movement. And along with this, we are supposed to give the feedback that actually promotes. Means operant conditioning also says whenever you are giving the reinforcement, so these particular behavior would be initiated and appreciated more than the other behaviors. So there are a few other clinical implications, and the limitation of using this, it cannot explain the accurate performance, and it will be possible to store a separate perceptual trace for every movement. According to the schema theory, so it has been given by Smith in 1970, there is actually a abstract representation of things stored. Means we do have a specific representation area in the brain to specific movement tasks, and so we can have multiple areas as well. If we are expected to perform a more complex tasks, more areas has to be recruited. If a task is simple, lesser area can be stimulated or needed to be stimulated. So there can be recovery schema and recognition schema as well. the clinical application of it is the task can be practiced in a different situations, and it lacks specificity, and there's not so much research is available to support it. Ecological theory was come into practice in 1991, and there is a coordination between perception and your action. So these perceptual cues actually improve the performance of the specific task. So there is an example just to, if suppose we are expected to reach to a glass of water, we'll do lots of errors. We can be overreaching or underreaching, and we'll try to hold the glass. We have to estimate or perceive about the weight and shape about, and then with the repeated trial and error, we would be able to hold it and to take it, and we'll be able to bring the water by the affected. So there can be different stages according to the systems model, novice stage, advanced stage, and expert stage, as similar to the cognitive stage, associative stage, and autonomous stage. In the Gentiles 2-stage model, there's a first and second stage. Initially, we'll try a closed skill, a specific skill, and then more discrete, more complex skill can be practiced. So thanking you all for such a patient listening, and hope I tried and hope you had understood about the basics of neuroplasticity and motor learning, and we can utilize them for the neurorehabilitation.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, very well explained about the neural plasticity. Brain has the ability to change its structure when exposed to different environments and activities, and this acts as powerful base for the sensory integration. Additionally, video shown by sir eloquently depicted the integrate phenomenon of neuroplasticity graphic